No, that's not happening, I said firmly, keeping my tone sharp, her brow furrowed in confusion, her lips twisting slightly. What are you even going on about now? You just assumed I'd be sitting here, ready to hear whatever excuse you had prepared. I explained, my voice steady. Well, newsflash. That's not happening because I won't be around to listen. Her irritation was immediate, her words clipped. Where do you think you're going? Anywhere that's not here. I shot back. Her expression shifted to a pout, the kind a petulant child wears when they don't get their way. What do you mean, anywhere but here? That's not something you need to concern yourself with, I said, letting an icy edge creep into my tone. You're acting like a child, she snapped, rolling her eyes dramatically. Seriously, Clark, grow up. It's the 21st century. People do things differently now. Oh, I have no doubt you've changed, I replied coolly. But me? I'm still the same guy. Maybe a little grayer, but I haven't changed. You though? You're not the person you used to be, and that's not a compliment. She glanced down at herself as though to verify her appearance, still as strikingly polished as ever, and gave me a mock-wounded look. What's that supposed to mean? For starters, I began, crossing my arms. You mentioned meeting someone for dinner. You admitted it was a guy, but somehow his name is this big mystery. That's new. Oh, don't be ridiculous, she said with an exaggerated wave of her hand, brushing it off like it was nothing. I've told you I love you more than ever, and that hasn't changed. Well, I can't say the same, I admitted. An hour ago, I felt the same way, loved you more than ever. But in the last 60 minutes, that love has been evaporating fast. Right now, it feels more like disgust. Her face twisted in a mix of offense and defiance. I knew you'd act like this, predictable and disappointing. Life's full of disappointments, I shot back, shrugging. Just yesterday, I was aiming for an 85 on the golf course but wound up with an 87 thanks to 3 lousy putts on the 11th. She glared at me like I'd grown a second head. Why are you even bringing up golf right now? It's a maddening game, I said, keeping my tone casual. And since we're talking about frustration, I figured I'd share mine. Her exasperation deepened, and my indifference clearly grated on her nerves. Clark, I'm leaving in 20 minutes, she said flatly, her words almost daring me to respond. You need to stop messing around and take this seriously. Oh, I am taking it seriously, Harper, I replied, meeting her gaze. The real issue here is that you're not someone who can be serious. Her expression faltered for just a second. She hated being dismissed. Harper prided herself on being respected. She ran her own business, had a degree from a top school, and earned almost as much as I did. People admired her. She expected me to do the same. I don't understand why you'd say something so unfair, she said, her voice tight. Her pride clearly stung. I'm leaving, Clark, and nothing about this changes us. I'll make you happier than you've ever been. Sure, maybe it's selfish, but I justify it to myself because I know it's what's best. You'll see it eventually, and everything will be fine. You're dead wrong, I replied bluntly. Oh, really? And what exactly am I wrong about? You think nothing's changing, but everything already has, I said. Her confusion was written all over her face. What's changed? You have, I said firmly. Your attitude, your priorities. Everything about you is different now. You've convinced yourself of some warped version of reality, and it's changing how I feel about you too. And trust me, there's more change coming. Her defiance flared up again. Like what? Well, for one thing, have you thought about how Sylvia and Finn will react when they find out their parents are splitting up? I asked. She sighed impatiently, waving the comment away like it was irrelevant. Splitting up? Stop being so dramatic. We're not getting divorced. And besides, our choices are none of their business. On one level, I agree our relationship is ours to handle, I said. But what you're doing isn't just about us. It's you and someone else. Oh, I see how it is, she muttered, clearly annoyed. You're going to make this as hard as possible, aren't you? Clark, let's just drop this for now and work it out. No, I said with finality. We're not working anything out. I'm leaving. This is more important than whatever plans you have, she argued, desperation creeping into her voice. I'm not canceling my plans, but maybe you should rethink yours, I said. Oh, don't act like this was some grand scheme, I added. I only decided what I'm doing a minute ago. She looked ready to fire back, but I cut her off. Harper, it's too late. The moment you thought I'd tolerate your disrespect and your games, you lost me. This is all lies, she shouted, her voice trembling with anger. I've never disrespected you. The problem is, I just don't believe you, I said calmly. Your actions today speak louder than any words you've said, and I'm not changing my mind. I'm done, Harper. Go ahead with your date. I won't be here when you get back. Grabbing my jacket, wallet, and keys, I walked to the door. Wait, she called after me, the sharp click of her high heels echoing as she hurried behind me. But she couldn't catch up. I shut the door and got into my car. By the time she stumbled outside, I was already driving away. I texted Finn. She lived close by, just a few miles down the road. Netflix and chill? I sent, keeping it simple. Her reply came almost instantly. Want some company? I sent a heart emoji back. I'll bring popcorn. When I got to her house, her dog Max, a massive, drooling Dogue de Bordeaux, practically tackled me at the door. The giant beast barked happily and pressed against me, drooling all over my pants. Hey there, big guy, I said, laughing as I rubbed his head. He snorted contentedly, wagging his entire body. Finn greeted me with a glass of wine and a bowl of popcorn already waiting. I took a sip, raising an eyebrow at her choice of drink. Not a word, she warned playfully. I like sweet wine even if you don't. My house, my rules. I chuckled. Hey, I tried my best to raise you right. You just went rogue. She laughed, tossing a blanket over my legs as she curled up beside me. So, what's Mom up to tonight? No idea, I replied honestly. Her brow furrowed. That's weird. Yeah, I admitted with a sigh. She gave me a searching look. Dad, what's really going on? You seem off. When I got home, she told me outright that she was going on a date, I said, my voice tinged with frustration. When I questioned her about it, she tried to backpedal, claiming she'd cancel so we could talk. But by then, I'd had enough. I walked out. Now, I don't know if she's actually on that date or just sitting at home. Finn's jaw nearly hit the floor. Wait, hold on, a date? Yeah, Finn, a date. I was just as floored as you are. She even admitted it was with a guy but refused to give me his name. Like I'm supposed to be okay with that. Her expression shifted to disbelief. Are you serious? Are you absolutely sure you heard her right? I wish I could say I misunderstood. But this isn't a joke, I said grimly. What the hell is going on? She demanded, her voice rising. I was at the house just a couple of days ago, and everything seemed fine. I thought so too, I admitted, shaking my head. But I had no idea what was brewing until tonight. Without hesitation, Finn grabbed her phone. I'm calling her. I stayed quiet, listening to Finn's side of the conversation. Her tone was sharp, each question more biting than the last. Where are you, Mom? Who are you with? Don't lie to me. Dad's right here and you just lied to my face. What the hell is wrong with you? You lied to your own daughter. You know what? Don't call me, don't come here. I'll decide when I'm ready to talk to you. She ended the call with a decisive tap and sat there, trembling with anger. For a moment, neither of us said a word. I reached out, pulling her close as she buried her face in my chest, her shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. She lied to me, Dad, Finn whispered, her voice breaking. She told me she was with you. She flat out lied. I know, sweetheart, I murmured, stroking her hair. I felt my chest tighten, the weight of it all pressing down on me. I think she went on that date anyway, I added softly, the words bitter on my tongue. Finn pulled back slightly, her sadness transforming into something sharper. How is this going to be okay? She demanded, her blue eyes blazing with anger. She's my mom, and she lied to me. She's out with some guy, and she tried to cover it up. What are you going to do about it, Dad? I sighed deeply, feeling more helpless than ever. Honestly, I don't know. I came here to clear my head, maybe try to make sense of all this. But now, I'm just as lost as you are. Finn wiped her eyes and grabbed a tissue, blowing her nose noisily before sprawling out on the floor next to Max. The big dog snorted sleepily as she flopped on top of him, burying her hands in his fur. After a few moments, she sat back up and leaned against me again. Max always knows how to calm me down, she said quietly, scratching his ears. And you always calm me down, kiddo? I said, trying to lighten the mood. Plus, let's be honest, you smell way better than he does. Finn let out a small laugh, wiping the last of her tears. True, he's got that funky dog smell going on. But seriously, Dad, talk to me. How did we get here? What's going on with you and Mom? What's your plan? I hesitated, rubbing my hands together. I wish I had answers for you, sweetheart, but I don't. I'm just trying to figure it all out one step at a time. After a long silence, Finn suddenly perked up. We should call Sylvia, she announced, reaching for her phone. Before I could object, she was already dialing. Hey Syl, where are you? Okay, you need to get here like now. No, I'm serious. Just grab an Uber. See you soon. She's at Straps, Finn explained, mentioning the nearby club they both liked. She'll be here in about 20 minutes. While we waited, we nibbled on popcorn and sipped our wine, tossing theories back and forth about what could possibly be going on with Harper. Exactly 20 minutes later, Sylvia burst through the door, greeted by Max, who nearly knocked her over with his enthusiasm. She patted his head before settling on the couch next to Finn. What's going on? Sylvia asked, her face full of concern. I was at a party, so this better be important. Finn arched an eyebrow at her. Are you drunk? Sylvia grinned sheepishly. I mean, I had a couple margaritas and a cocktail, so maybe just a little. Finn rolled her eyes and looked at me. Go make her some coffee, Dad. She needs to sober up for this. I got up and brewed a quick pot of coffee, and by the time Sylvia had downed 2 cups, she was clear-eyed and ready to listen. Finn didn't hold back, laying out everything that had happened. Sylvia's expression grew darker with every word. Daddy, there's got to be more to this, she said, her voice steady but serious. Are you sure you're not leaving anything out? Like, have you two been fighting? Any issues in the bedroom? I let out a tired laugh. No more than usual. We bicker sometimes, but nothing out of the ordinary. Mostly about you two, if I'm being honest. I nudged Finn playfully, and she swatted my arm. And no, as far as I know, there haven't been any problems in the bedroom. If there were, your mom hasn't said a word. Sylvia frowned, deep in thought. I think you need to talk to her, Dad. Finn and I can try to help, but this has to start with you. Why didn't you just stay and hash it out? I probably should have, I admitted, running a hand through my hair. But the way she told me about that date, it was so cold. Like it didn't even matter. I couldn't stay. Finn squeezed my hand, her voice softer now. I get it, Dad, but Sylvia's right. We need to confront her and figure out what she's thinking. Can you talk to her without blowing up? I don't know, I admitted honestly. I need to clear my head first. I think I'll head to the lake house, try to relax, maybe sleep on it. I'll come with you, Finn said without hesitation. Let me grab a bag and some stuff for Max. She disappeared into her room, then called back. Sylvia, give Dad a cigarette. Sylvia smirked but dug into her purse, pulling out a sleek case. She handed me one, and I lit it, the smoke curling around me like a familiar but unwelcome guest. Finn reappeared with her bag and Max's things. Together, we loaded everything into the truck. Before we left, Sylvia hugged us both. Please don't do anything drastic, Daddy, she said softly. We'll figure this out. I'll do my best, I promised with a weak smile. But you know me. I'm not always great at playing it cool. The drive to the lake house was quiet but comforting. Finn held my hand, asking me question after question. Some I could answer, most I couldn't. When we arrived, We let Max run by the water, splashing in the shallows and chasing frogs. Finn stayed close, her small hand still gripping mine. As the sun dipped below the horizon, we headed inside. I glanced at her. Mojito? Her face lit up with a smile. Absolutely. I whipped up 2 strong mojitos while Finn got a fire going in the fireplace. We settled on the couch, sipping our drinks and sharing a cigarette, letting the conversation drift from deep reflections to light-hearted nonsense. "What's on your mind, Dad?" she eventually asked, breaking the comfortable silence. "I'm running through my options," I admitted. "But everything depends on what your mom decides. Honestly, Finn, this is a mess. She might come back tomorrow, say it was a huge mistake, and want to fix things. Then what? Couples therapy?" Finn chuckled bitterly, shaking her head. "Therapy might be too ambitious. Maybe we should try a magic wand instead." She grew serious again. "But really, what if she doesn't backtrack? What if she goes through with this? Then I guess we'll end up in court," I replied, the words tasting bitter. "But I can't imagine that's what she wants. Why would she choose to blow everything up like this?" "I don't know, Dad. You're the smart one here. You're practically a psychologist. What makes someone behave like this?" She paused, frowning thoughtfully. "There are a million reasons people cheat. Revenge, insecurity, boredom, wanting to feel desired, or looking for something they're not getting at home. But none of that feels like Mom. And if she had issues," I said, leaning forward, "you'd think she'd bring them up, give me a chance to fix things. Communication isn't exactly revolutionary." "You'd think?" Finn agreed, her voice dripping with frustration. "But I guess we'll know more soon enough. I'll talk to her tomorrow and see what she says." After a pause, she added, "You'll have to drive me back later, so I can grab my car." That night, I surprised myself by sleeping well. I dozed off scrolling through videos on my phone and woke up the next morning feeling, if not rested, at least functional. I got dressed and took Max outside, letting him wander the bushes and sniff around for nearly an hour before we headed back. When I walked inside, Finn was already up, poking around the kitchen. "Dad, do we have any food here?" "Not really," I admitted. "We didn't stock up before coming." She shrugged. "That's fine. You can take me out for breakfast. I'm craving French toast from Gaze." "Sounds like a plan," I said. We left Max napping on his bed and drove to Gaze, where we indulged in thick slices of French toast, endless coffee, and a conversation that bounced between possible reasons for Harper's behavior and lighter topics like school, Max's antics, and Finn's internship. By the time we finished, we were both tired of analyzing the situation and decided to head back to her place. After dropping Finn off, I took a long walk back to the lake house and settled onto the porch glider to watch the boats glide across the water. The loneliness hit me hard. I missed Harper. Not just the person, but the simple moments we used to share, the easy companionship that had been ours for years. I missed having Finn nearby and even Max, who was the most loyal friend a man could ask for. Hoping to clear my head, I took the boat out and fished among the cedar thickets, reeling in 6 good crappies. After cleaning them, I paired them with some frozen fries and ended up with a surprisingly satisfying meal. Later, when I turned my phone back on, I saw texts from both Finn and Sylvia, asking me to come over. I drove to Finn's place and found them in the kitchen mid-pizza. Finn handed me a beer, and we sat at the bar while they ate. "Well, I talked to Mom," Finn started, her tone cautious. "Me too," Sylvia added, her expression grim. "And you're not going to like what we found out." Finn took a deep breath before continuing. "She told me she's unhappy. Not with you, but with her life. She says it feels dull, like something's missing. Apparently, some guy at work has been hitting on her, and she likes the attention. She said it makes her feel attractive again, desired. She told me she wants to explore dating, and said you could date too if you wanted." I stared at her, my mind struggling to process her words. "Sylvia, is that what she told you too?" "Pretty much," she confirmed. "Daddy, I don't think it'll last. She's probably just going through a phase. She'll realize it's a mistake and come back." "Are you serious?" Finn burst out, her face flushed with anger. "You're okay with this garbage?" I never said that, Sylvia shot back, defensive. I just think it's temporary. She'll come to her senses eventually. And what am I supposed to do while she's having this phase? I asked, my voice heavy with disbelief. Be patient, Sylvia said quietly. Love her. Give her time to figure it out. She loves you, Dad. She's just going through something. Maybe it's a midlife crisis. Finn's anger flared. This isn't just a midlife thing, Sylvia. She went out with another man. Let's not pretend this is normal behavior. What do you want, then? Sylvia challenged. Divorce her? Lock her in the house. Divorce is absolutely on the table, I said firmly. No, it's not, Sylvia argued, her voice rising. Dad, don't throw away everything you've built with her over this. You're soulmates, you know that. Then maybe you should remind her of that, Finn retorted. You're acting like Dad needs to hold the family together while she runs around doing whatever she wants. Mom caused this, not Dad. I'm not taking her side, Sylvia snapped. You sure about that? Because it sounds like you're making excuses for her. Finn shot back. Mom betrayed Dad. She's wrong, and if you can't see that, you're as blind as she is. Enough, I said, raising my hands to stop them, but neither was ready to back down. Sylvia turned to Finn, her face flushed. So what's your solution, Finn? Do you want them to split up? Is that what you want? It's not about what I want, Finn said coldly. It's about what Dad wants. And let's not forget, Sylvia, that he didn't ask for this. Mom did. It's her mess to clean up. And what does that mean? Sylvia asked, clearly upset. It means I don't want to see her right now, Finn said bluntly. I'm not cutting her off, but I'm not going to pretend things are fine either. So you're just shutting her out? Sylvia asked, aghast. Not permanently, but she needs to realize that this is her mess. If she doesn't, we're just enabling her. Let's slow down, I interjected, pulling them both into an awkward hug. Finn leaned into me, but Sylvia pulled away, grabbed her bag, and stormed out. We watched as she stood by her car for a moment, headlights on, before finally driving away. God, I'm so mad at her right now, Finn muttered. I'm sorry, Dad, but that was ridiculous. I sighed, the weight of everything crushing me. It wasn't her fault entirely. This is your mother's doing, Finn. You and Sylvia shouldn't be caught in the middle of this mess. Finn hugged me tightly. I trust you, Dad. Just promise to keep me close. Okay? I always will, I said, holding her as the fire crackled softly in the background. Always? I promised her, holding her close for another moment. But I knew the time had come to face Harper. I couldn't avoid it any longer. When I pulled into the garage and saw her car parked there, my heart sank. I sat in the car for a moment, forcing myself to steady my nerves before heading inside. My stomach churned, so I poured a glass of milk to settle it. Harper must have heard me because she appeared in the doorway from her office. Hi, I said, keeping my tone neutral. I'm glad you came back, she replied, her eyes scanning me carefully. Harper, I'm not okay, I said bluntly, cutting straight to the point. Her expression turned pensive. I know, she admitted softly. I just needed to feel safe. Are you ready to talk? I nodded. Where do you want to do this? Here or in the living room? She gestured toward the living room. We might as well be comfortable. She grabbed a juice and I grabbed a box of wheat cakes, though I had no appetite. We sat on the couch, an unusual distance between us, about a foot apart. Normally, Harper preferred to sit close, and the tension in the air was palpable. I want to apologize, Clark, she started, her voice measured. I know I handled this the wrong way. Very wrong. I raised a hand to stop her. If you think the problem is just how you handled it, we're not going to get anywhere. She looked at me, confused. I'm not following. I leaned forward. It's not about how you told me, Harper. The issue is that you even considered going on a date with someone else in the first place. That's the real problem. Do you understand that? I understand what you're saying, she said slowly, but I don't think you understand what I mean. All right, I replied, folding my arms. Explain it to me. She hesitated before continuing. When I say I went about this wrong, I mean I should have taken the time to explain my intentions better. Maybe if I had, it wouldn't feel so intolerable for you. I raised an eyebrow. Harper, you'd need a magic wand to make this tolerable. Did you happen to discover any magical powers recently? A faint smile crossed her lips. Not quite magic, but close. Go ahead, then. The floor's yours, I said, gesturing for her to continue. She sighed, settling back against the couch. Think about it, Clark. How old are we now? I'm 47, and you're basically ancient at 50. I chuckled, despite myself. Yeah, and I'm definitely feeling every one of those years. Not physically, though. Honestly, we're in the best shape we've ever been. But emotionally, mentally, that's where it's different. Do you remember how we felt when we were 25? I nodded. Yeah, I remember. So do I, she said, her voice softening. Back then, everything felt so alive. The world seemed limitless. Every day brought something new and exciting. It felt like we were constantly discovering love, life, and each other. Do you remember that feeling? Yes, I replied, meeting her gaze. I remember. She sighed again. Now, think about our lives today. Sundays roll around, and it's the same routine. We either sleep in or go to church, maybe make love, cook dinner, watch a movie or some soccer. It's the same thing over and over. You're not wrong, I admitted. Then Monday comes and it's work, home, dinner, bed, and repeat. The days blur into weeks, the weeks into years, and suddenly we've been doing the same things for decades. Don't you feel like we're just running on autopilot? I get what you're saying, I said, nodding. But here's the difference. I like our routine. I enjoy it because it's ours. We've built it together. And if it wasn't working, we'd find something new. But we'd do it together. She looked at me, her expression distant. I love what we've built too. But I also want something more. Something that brings back that sense of surprise, that feeling of being alive. I want us to keep growing and trying new things. I hear you, I said carefully. But what I don't understand is why you think we can't do those things together. Why involve other people? I think we can explore together, she said hesitantly. But when I brought up the date, I thought, maybe we could do it separately. You could try it too, if you wanted. I stared at her, stunned. Harper, when I think of together, I think of just the two of us. Once you bring in a third person, it's no longer together, it's something entirely different. Do you understand that? She leaned back, folding her arms. Clark, when was the last time you spent an evening alone with a woman who wasn't me? If we're not counting our daughters or family, it was probably 6 months ago. Remember when we went to Kansas City with Chloe to meet those telecom reps? She nodded. And did you feel anything with Chloe? Any tension? No, I said firmly. Chloe's beautiful, sure, but she's a colleague. I'm married to you, Harper. We don't flirt. There's nothing there. But if you took her out to dinner, Harper pressed, went dancing, held her close, wouldn't it stir something in you? Wouldn't that be exciting? Maybe that's why I don't do it, I replied evenly. And why not? She asked, her tone probing. Because I'm married to you, Harper. I don't put myself in situations where temptation could even be an option. She studied me, her eyes narrowing. What if I told you I was okay with it? It wouldn't matter, I said firmly. It wouldn't feel right for me. She sighed, frustration flickering across her face. 10 years ago, I wouldn't have brought this up. But now, I feel like I'm mature enough to handle it. And I think you should be, too. I shook my head. That's the thing, Harper. This isn't what I signed up for. When we got married, we made a promise to be faithful to each other. If you want to break that, it's your choice. But I have my own choices to make, and this isn't right for me. I don't want to leave you, she said, her voice pleading. I just want more freedom. Some adventure, some spontaneity. But I want it with you. You're going to go through with this no matter how I feel, aren't you? I asked, my voice low. She hesitated, looking away. I don't know, Clark. I think I might. I felt my chest tighten. And that's what hurts the most, Harper. The fact that you've clearly thought this through, planned it out, and can talk about it so calmly tells me you've been hiding things for a while. What else haven't you told me? And what about Friday night? I'm sorry about Friday, she said softly. I shouldn't have done that. I was just angry because you walked out instead of staying to talk. That's nonsense, Harper, I said sharply. You planned it before Friday. You were going to go through with it and lie to me about it. You lied to Finn, too. You've gotten very good at lying. She flinched. I told you I'd cancel if we could talk. And yet, here we are, I replied, my voice cold. That's just more excuses, Harper, I said, my voice flat but resolute. I'm done with all this talk. You had your chance to manage things and you blew it. This isn't about finding the right way to frame it. It's about what you did, what you plan to do, and what you still want to do. That's all that matters. I can't control your choices, but I can control mine. I'm packing my things and leaving you to figure out whatever it is you need. Her face fell, her voice cracking as she protested. What the hell, Clark? That's not what I want. It doesn't matter what you want anymore, I said, my exhaustion evident. What matters is that you wanted something more than me. Right now, I don't trust you. You've basically told me I'm boring and not enough for you. Even if nothing happens, I know how you feel about me now. And that's something I can't ignore. We're not on the same page, Harper. It's time to face that. I went downstairs to grab my suitcase, tossing in clothes and essentials for a week. I figured I could come back later for the rest. Harper trailed after me, her words spilling out in frantic bursts, pleading with me to reconsider. But I didn't listen. Once my bags were packed, I carried them out to the truck. She tried to follow me, but I kept the door locked. As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror to see her standing in the driveway, looking small and defeated. I loved her. God, I still loved her. But it felt like half of me had been ripped away, leaving a gaping hole where trust used to be. I stopped by the grocery store, hoping the mundane task would distract me, even for a moment. Didn't. The weight of everything pressed down harder as I drove back to the lake. I turned on a podcast, desperate for something to drown out the noise in my head. But by the time I reached the house, I couldn't remember a single word of it. Inside, I unpacked in a daze, feeling drained in every possible way. I knew I should call the girls, but even the thought of it felt like too much effort. After about an hour, my phone buzzed. It was Sylvia. Hey, sweetheart, I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. Where are you, Daddy? She asked, concern lacing her tone. I'm at the lake, I replied. Where are you? I'm at your house, she said, her voice quiet but tense. Mom called me and asked me to come over. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a call from Finn. Hold on, honey, it's Finn, I said, switching over to her briefly to tell her I'd call back, then returned to Sylvia. All right, I just told Finn I'd call her back. I'm glad you're there with your mom, I said. Dad. She's a wreck, Sylvia said, her frustration evident. You should be here, not me. I know, Sylvia, but it's not that simple, I said carefully. Are you sure you want to talk this out over the phone? She hesitated. No, I guess not. Are you coming back, though? Not right now, I said gently. I'll explain everything when I see you. She sighed heavily. This is bad, Dad. I have work tomorrow. I can stay tonight, but I'm slammed at the office after that. I don't know how long I can deal with this. Your mom works too, Sylvia, I reminded her. You need to do what's right for you. This is something your mom and I need to handle. Her voice softened. I'm so sorry you're dealing with this, Daddy. I know this is hard on you too. I love you. I love you too, sweetheart, I replied. Try to get some rest. Okay? After ending the call, I pulled myself together enough to call Finn back. Hey, honey, how are you holding up? I asked. Daddy, are you okay? She countered. I will be, I said, keeping my voice calm. What about you? I'm managing, she said. Are you still at the lake? I am, I confirmed. Do you want some company? I can pack a bag and come out. Of course, I said. You're always welcome here. Great. I'll be there in an hour, she said, her voice lighter. Just let me finish up some leftovers first. By the time Finn arrived, I was in the kitchen, prepping some food. The sliding door creaked open, and the sound of Max's claws clicking on the floor filled the room. He made a beeline for the counter, sniffing at the food, and I couldn't help but chuckle. I knelt down, giving him a scratch behind the ears before tossing him a few trimmings from the pork chops. Finn came up behind me and wrapped her arms around my waist, hugging me tightly. I dried my hands and hugged her back, holding her a little longer than usual. "Smells good," she said, smiling up at me. She grabbed a paper towel and wiped the drool from Max's mouth before he flopped down next to the bar stools. I couldn't help but smile at her. In the chaos of everything, her presence was an anchor, a reminder that, no matter what else fell apart, she was there, solid and steady. The food was amazing, and we dove in, savoring every bite. Between mouthfuls, I glanced at Finn, ready to broach the inevitable topic. "So," I began cautiously, "how did things go with your mom?" Finn's expression darkened, her fork pausing mid-air. "Not great," she admitted. She gave a lot of reasons, but it all boiled down to her being bored and wanting to relive the excitement of feeling young again. I sighed, setting my glass down. "All right, let me ask you something. If you were looking at this as a professional, not as her daughter, what would you say is going on with her?" Finn leaned back, considering the question. "Dad, I wouldn't treat a family member. It's unethical. But if someone came to me with this story as a stranger, I'd probably say they were dealing with depression and a big life transition. People throw around the term midlife crisis, but that's not an official diagnosis, you know?" "I didn't realize that," I said, surprised. "I thought it was an actual thing." "It's more of a pop culture term," she explained. "In reality, it's just a period of reckoning. People start facing their own mortality, realizing their time isn't infinite, and some get stuck in this spiral of depression and impulsive choices, trying to feel alive again." I smiled at her. "You've become so smart, you know that?" She grinned. "Yes, I have. Don't forget it." "Do you think she should see a therapist?" I asked. "Absolutely," Finn replied without hesitation. "And I'll tell her that. But I'm not getting directly involved. She has to want it for herself." I nodded, guilt creeping in. "I'm sorry you're caught up in this mess, Finn. I wish you didn't have to deal with any of it." "Don't apologize, Dad," she said firmly, placing a hand on my arm. "You're not the one who dragged us into this. I feel bad for you too, but we're going to get through it together." "Yeah," I said, trying to sound optimistic. "Not like we've got much of a choice." Sylvia came out to the lake Tuesday evening, bringing some tension along with her. Finn whipped up a potato salad while I grilled hamburgers, and we ate together on the porch, enjoying the crisp night air. "Dad, Mom's an absolute wreck," Sylvia said, her voice filled with worry. "Yeah," I replied, keeping my tone even. "Sounds about the same as when I left." "What are you going to do?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. "She says she wants you to come back. She told me she understands the damage she's caused, and that she'll forget all of this if you just come home." I sighed, taking a sip of my drink. "I'm sure she's sorry, in her own way." Finn leaned in. "What do you mean, in her own way?" I set my glass down and took a deep breath. "It's hard to explain, but I'll try. Would you two like a drink first?" "What VE you got?" Sylvia asked. "Stuff for Palomas," I offered, heading inside to mix them. The time in the kitchen gave me a moment to gather my thoughts. By the time I returned, we were all settled with our drinks, ready for the inevitable conversation. "So, Sylvia, are you still dating that, what's his name?" Finn teased, trying to lighten the mood. Sylvia laughed. "No, he turned out to be a total jerk. But I met someone new about a month ago. His name's David." "Oh my God, you're dating a dick?" Finn blurted out, laughing so hard she could barely breathe. Sylvia joined in, and for a moment the tension eased. I seized the opportunity to steer the conversation. "All right, girls, suppose David told you he thought you were boring, Sylvia. How would that make you feel?" "Not great," she admitted, wrinkling her nose. "But I'm not boring. No, you're not, I agreed. But if that's how he feels, could you really argue with it? She frowned. I'm not sure what you mean. Well, think of it this way, I explained. Finn doesn't like raisins and you hate coconut. Those are your feelings. No one can convince you to feel differently, right? Right? Finn said slowly, catching on. So, you're saying Mom feels this way about you? Not in those exact words, I said. But she did say she misses the spark, the excitement of when we were younger. She said she feels like we're stuck in a rut, doing the same things over and over, and she wants to bring some of that thrill back. Finn's brow furrowed. Do you feel the same way? Maybe a little, I admitted. I know we're not 25 anymore, but I like what we have. If I didn't, I'd be doing something else. I don't see anything wrong with that, Sylvia said. So what's the issue? The issue, I said carefully, is that she doesn't want to do those things with me. She wants to do them with other men. She likes the attention, the feeling of being wanted, and she's open to dating, and to whatever comes after. Finn's face hardened. How are we supposed to handle that? We can't argue with how she feels, I said. But the truth is, she won't find the excitement she's looking for just by dating someone new. No, she won't, Finn agreed, shaking her head. And let's be honest, I continued. Do you really think she decided this on a whim last Friday and lined up a date that same night? No, Finn said quietly. She's been thinking about this for a while. Exactly, I said. And now we're all caught in the fallout. Sylvia leaned forward, looking hopeful. Dad, if she went to therapy and genuinely changed her mind, could you two work things out? I sighed, the weight of her question settling on me. Sylvia, your mom thought she could come to me, tell me she was going on a date, and expect me to just be okay with it. Do you understand how deeply disrespectful that is? She nodded slowly. Yes, Dad, I get it. I'm sorry. I looked at her carefully. And even if she apologized, do you think she's truly sorry? Or is she just sorry for how she handled it? She did apologize, Sylvia said hesitantly. But it was more about how she told you, not what she wanted to do. Sylvia straightened in her seat. I'm going to talk to her. Finn, will you help me? If she's willing, could you recommend a therapist? Finn nodded. If she wants help, I'll do it. But I won't step in unless she makes that choice herself. Fair enough, Sylvia said, hugging us before she left, promising she'd always be there for me. In the weeks that followed, Finn kept her distance from Harper, only mentioning her when necessary. Sylvia gave occasional updates, saying Harper was resistant to individual therapy but willing to consider couples counseling. When Finn asked my opinion, I was skeptical. Couples counseling won't fix this if she doesn't address the real issue, Finn said one evening. Are you ready for something like that? No, I replied. I'm not interested in seeing other women, and I'm definitely not interested in sharing her with other men. Are you sure, Dad? Sylvia chimed in during a visit. Maybe a break from marriage would help. You could meet someone new, have fun, and see where it goes. I snorted. And then what? What happens the next time she gets bored? I'm not playing that game. 2 months passed without meaningful change, and I finally decided enough was enough. I filed for divorce. Harper called immediately. Clark, this has gone too far. Are you actually divorcing me? On what grounds? It's a no-fault divorce, I replied calmly. I don't need grounds. What are you going to tell people? She asked sharply. That we had a disagreement, and you left? I'm not telling anyone anything, I said. It's not their business. Well, I'll be there, she said. We need to talk before this goes any further. Dinner on Friday. Fine, I agreed. When Friday came, she walked into the lake house unannounced, her presence instantly reigniting old emotions. She looked beautiful, the same woman I'd loved for so many years, but the tension between us was palpable. She tossed her purse on a chair and approached, clearly expecting a hug or kiss. I gave her a brief hug, unable to offer more. What can I do to help? She asked softly. Everything's ready, I replied, nodding toward the table. You can set it. We sat down to dinner, poured some wine, and she started talking. I don't want a divorce, Clark, she began. That's what I don't understand, I replied, meeting her gaze. Why not? Because I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Then why? I asked, my voice quiet but firm. Why wasn't what we had enough for you? I never said I wasn't happy, Harper argued, her tone defensive. Maybe you used the wrong word, I replied, leaning forward slightly. But don't play word games with me, Harper. You've made it painfully clear that you're not satisfied. Then you're not hearing me, she insisted. I am satisfied. I just wanted to add something new, something that could make our lives even better. I raised an eyebrow. Okay, but you wanted to add that something new by dating other men. That makes me profoundly uncomfortable. The simplest solution here is for us to get divorced. Then you can date all the men you want without me standing in your way. That's not fair, she shot back. Why does it matter if I date other men, as long as it doesn't change my love for you? The only difference is I wouldn't be married to you while I do it. Exactly, I said, my tone sharp. And that means I can move on with my life, maybe even meet someone who doesn't feel the need to date other people. You'd get your freedom and I'd get mine. That's not what I want, she said, her voice rising. Why should it be a choice between you and random dates with other men? If I have to choose, I'd rather be married to you. I get that, Harper. The girls understand that too. But here's the problem. I don't want to be married to someone who even wants to date other men, whether you follow through or not. Dinner ended with an air of finality, and we moved to the couch. She looked at me with a mixture of desperation and sadness. So that's it? She asked, her voice trembling. Even though I love you, even though I've given up the idea and chosen you, you still don't want to stay married to me? Yes, Harper, I said quietly. That's exactly it. Look at me, Clark, she said, moving closer. Before I could react, she was in my lap, kissing me with an intensity one hadn't felt in years. For a moment, I let myself get swept up in the warmth and familiarity of it. But reality hit me hard, and I stopped responding. She kept going, but when she noticed my lack of enthusiasm, she slowed and eventually stopped. What's wrong? She asked, confusion clouding her face. I looked her straight in the eyes. Harper, have you met someone else? Her expression faltered, and the hesitation in her eyes told me the truth. She took a deep breath and answered softly, Yes, Clark, I have. My stomach tightened, but I forced myself to stay calm. Are you planning to go on a date with him? Eventually, probably, she admitted, avoiding my gaze. Well, I said, leaning back, I like being married, Harper. I don't find it boring. She sighed deeply, as if the weight of the moment were crushing her. Could I be one of the women you date? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Maybe, I replied honestly, but I don't think I can do that. I don't feel the same way about you anymore. Maybe with time I'll stop being angry about how this played out. Maybe I'll stop thinking about the other guys you've been with. But don't hold your breath. Her face crumpled, and she grabbed her purse, walking to the door. Let me know if you change your mind, she said before slipping out. The divorce process moved along until her attorney blindsided me with a request for counseling. I hadn't seen it coming. What the hell is this? I asked my lawyer. The judge has to order it if one of you requests it, he explained. I'm not doing it, I said firmly. This is none of the court's or the state's business. He could hold you in contempt if you refuse, my lawyer warned. Then figure it out, I snapped. I can't, he replied helplessly. It's the law. I sat there in silence, considering my options. What if we withdraw the petition? Would he still be able to order it? My lawyer blinked in surprise. No, I don't think so. Is that what you want? Yes, do it, I said decisively. When we returned to court, the decision took everyone by surprise, especially Harper, who looked smugly triumphant. After the proceedings adjourned, I approached her. I dropped the suit, I said flatly, because I refuse to be forced into something I don't want. But until you end this nonsense, I'm cutting you off completely. Don't call me, don't write, and don't send messages. If that's how you want it, you'll never hear from me again." Her mouth opened in protest, but I didn't wait to hear it. I turned and walked away. For the next 2 months, Harper tried every trick in the book to reach me. She used Sylvia as a go-between, which only stirred up more tension between Sylvia and Finn. She showed up at the lake house 3 times, but I'd already changed the locks. When she came to my workplace, I had security escort her out. Finally, she gave up and told Sylvia she was done with counseling. That was all I needed to proceed with the divorce. This time it was uncontested. The judge finalized it without fanfare, and there was no longer any requirement for counseling. Harper kept the house in town, and I got the lake house, just as I'd wanted. We divided our assets cleanly, businesses, property, and pensions, with no spousal support owed by either of us. The process was tedious but straightforward. After the divorce, I threw myself into new ventures, buying up small businesses and quickly generating enough income to retire. My days were filled with fishing, learning to water ski, and spending summers on the boat with the girls. By October, I was ready for a change and applied for a visa to live in Mexico. I winterized the lake house, traded in my Chevy for a diesel F-350, bought a luxury camper, hooked up my boat, and drove south. I settled at Lake Baraka in Nayarit, where I planned to stay for 6 months. The girls were uneasy about my decision at first, but they warmed up when I sent plane tickets to Guadalajara and promised plenty of beach time. In my first week, I found a 5-acre property near the lake, bought it, and started setting up utilities. By the end of the month, I was a local. On my second fishing trip, I reeled in a 14-pound bass and was hooked, literally and figuratively. Sylvia visited in January, and we spent time exploring Puerto Vallarta and lounging by the ocean. On our last day, as we watched the waves, she turned to me. "You're not coming back, are you, Daddy?" she asked quietly. "I haven't decided," I said, "but I'm leaning towards staying. The only reason I'd come back is for you girls. I'll visit you whenever you want, though." She hesitated. "What about Mom?" I grimaced. "How's she doing?" "She works a lot," Sylvia said. "I think she regrets everything." "How can you tell?" "She doesn't say it outright, but she's not herself anymore. She seems sad. Dating hasn't been what she thought it would be." I squeezed her hand. "I'm sorry to hear that, but I'd rather not talk about her. Okay?" She nodded, giving me a sad smile. "I just wanted to understand." "I know," I said, my voice soft. In February, Finn flew down and stayed with me in the camper. We spent 3 days soaking up the sun before heading to my property. When she saw it, her eyes widened. "This place is incredible, Daddy. You really live here?" she asked. "I do," I said with a smile. "It's a lucky man's life." She gave me a serious look. "You've built a beautiful life. But what comes next?" "Whatever I want," I said with a grin. And for the first time in years, I truly felt free. "We listen to people's concerns," Finn said with a grin. I couldn't help but laugh. "So, like bartenders?" She joined in, her laughter filling the room. "Exactly. Maybe I'm more of a bartender than a psychologist." She stayed for 2 wonderful weeks, and when she finally flew back, the house felt unbearably empty. I missed her more than I expected, but eventually, I found my rhythm again. 6 months later, I got a call from her. "Dad, I need a favor," she began, her tone light. "If I can help, you know I will," I said. "I need a loan," she admitted. "Okay," I replied cautiously. "Are we talking a big loan or just a little cash to tide you over?" "It's a big one," she confessed. Curious now, I asked, "What's it for? Don't you trust me?" She teased, laughing softly. "Of course I trust you," I said. "But I'm your dad. I have the right to be nosy." All right. I want to buy a cabin," she said, excitement bubbling in her voice. "That's interesting. Is it an existing property? Does it generate income? Can I look it up online?" "Yes and yes," she said. "But I'd rather you visit it." "Where is it?" I asked, trying not to sound too eager. How far from me? About 10 miles, she said, clearly trying not to laugh. It's on Lake Baraka. You're kidding, I said, laughing out loud. You're pulling my leg, aren't you? Nope, she replied, laughing with me. I've already gone over the financials with an accountant. It's profitable and it even has a bar. So now I can listen to people's problems, just like you said bartenders do. I couldn't help but join her laughter. Oh my God, honey. This sounds like a dream come true. So, how much are you asking for? When she shared the number, my eyebrows shot up. Wow, Finn, you're going all in. Go big or go home, right? She said, grinning. Don't you have enough saved up? I asked, genuinely curious. Not quite enough to avoid borrowing, she admitted. I'd like to pay you back with interest once I show steady profits and can get traditional financing. Right now, I'm like someone with no credit. I nodded, already convinced. This is incredible, Finn. I can't believe you're doing this. I'll check it out and you'll need to visit too. 3 weeks later, she arrived, and we went to see the property together. It was a cozy, well-maintained cabin that catered primarily to U.S. fishermen. The place had a solid business model and it looked like a great investment. 6 months later, Finn officially became the owner. She ran the business with the same dedication and skill I'd seen in her all her life. Max quickly became the bar's unofficial mascot, adored and spoiled by the patrons. I spent plenty of time with Finn, often hanging around the bar, watching her work her magic with customers. The property had a first-rate restaurant that was a favorite among locals and visitors alike. One busy Friday night, the chef approached me in the kitchen where I had my usual table. Mr. Barton, would you mind some company tonight? He asked. I hesitated but nodded. Sure, why not? He returned with a woman who left me momentarily speechless. She was stunning. Her elegant yellow dress fell just below her knees, one shoulder bare, with a slit that revealed a perfectly toned leg as she walked. Her glossy black curls, streaked with silver, framed a striking heart-shaped face with luminous dark eyes, high cheekbones, and a delicate chin. The chef pulled out a chair for her, and she sat gracefully. Mr. Barton, this is Miss Howard, he said. She's a friend of the house. I stood and offered my hand. Please call me Clark. No, mister. At dinner. She laughed softly, a low, melodic sound that I instantly wanted to hear again. You can call me Melanie, she said, her accent soft but her English flawless. Her voice had a rich, velvety quality that immediately put me at ease. As the server poured her a glass of sangria, I struggled to find words. It's, pretty packed tonight, I managed. Lucky they keep this table open. Melanie smiled, a hint of amusement in her eyes. Yes, it's very busy. I usually sit at the bar, but tonight, I wanted to avoid someone there I'd rather not see. Well, I said, attempting a bit of charm. You're safe here with me. Keeping obnoxious guests away from beautiful ladies is my specialty. Her cheeks flushed a soft peach and she laughed. I'm glad to have such a gallant protector. Do you come here often? I asked, desperate to keep the conversation flowing. Yes, she said. As Thomas mentioned, your daughter owns the place. I can cook, but I prefer not to, so I come here instead. She glanced at me warmly. Your daughter is wonderful. We're becoming good friends. Really? I said, genuinely pleased. I'm glad to hear that. Do you live nearby? Yes, she nodded. I have a house on the Siloa River, though I also keep a home in Los Machos. And you? I'm just a few miles away, I said. I've got some land, a camper, and a boat. I like the freedom to move whenever I want. She tilted her head, intrigued. So, you're new here, like Finn? I moved here about a year ago, I explained. I came first, and Finn followed after visiting and falling in love with the place. What brought you here? She asked, her tone genuinely curious. Fishing, mostly, I replied. But I stayed for the peace and freedom. I sold my business back in the States and decided it was time to live life differently. She hesitated, then asked, What kind of business did you run? If you don't mind me asking. I chuckled. No need to apologize. I made industrial parts for companies like Caterpillar and John Deere. Her eyes lit up with admiration. So, a bit of an industrial magnate? She teased. Hardly, I said with a laugh. But I did well enough to retire early. She looked at me thoughtfully. You're so young to be retired. Lucky, I guess. If you consider 50 young, that is. I could retire, she mused. But I feel like I still have things to accomplish. Such as? I asked, intrigued by her determination. She leaned in, her eyes sparkling mischievously. I'm a smuggler, she said with a playful smile. I blinked, caught off guard, until she laughed and waved a hand. No, I'm kidding. I own a pharmaceutical company. We supply medications to the Mexican Social Security Institute. Wow, I said, impressed. That's no small feat. Thank you, she said with a smile. I love what I do. But sometimes I wonder what it would be like to slow down. Something tells me you'd be good at whatever pace you choose, I said, meaning it. Our conversation flowed effortlessly after that, and I found myself wishing the night wouldn't end. That's why I spend time in Los Machos, Melanie explained, her smile lingering as she watched me. But perhaps I should retire and take up the wandering life. What do you say? Loosen up. Have a few adventures. I laughed, shaking my head. A bit of a free spirit, huh? Her smile widened. I do try. Your English is remarkable, I said, genuinely impressed. But I'm guessing your Spanish is even better. She chuckled, and we seamlessly switched to Spanish. Her fluency and eloquence in both languages only added to her charm. I'd like to know more about you, Melanie, I said, my curiosity growing. What's your story? She tilted her head thoughtfully, her dark eyes studying me. Curious just because I'm friends with your daughter? Exactly, I replied with a grin. Purely for Finn's sake. She laughed warmly, her voice like music. Well, I own a fair bit of land along the river. I keep horses, but mostly cattle. What breed? I asked, genuinely interested. Registered gay cattle, she replied. I can't say I've met any, I teased, earning another laugh. Well, she said, still giggling, I'll have to introduce you to a few. You'll see they're excellent company. I laughed along with her, caught up in the moment. Melanie, you're a very funny woman, I said, completely captivated. I hope you don't mind me asking, I added cautiously. But, does Mr. Howard exist? Her laughter faded, and she grew pensive. Not anymore, she said softly. He died 11 years ago in a petrochemical plant explosion. I froze, feeling a pang of regret for bringing up such a painful subject. Melanie, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. She held up a hand to stop me. It's all right, Clark. Time has eased the pain. Now, I choose to remember the good times. I nodded, my voice gentle. The memories are what matter. The pain fades, but those stay with us. She gave me a thoughtful look. What about you? Finn obviously has a mother. Yes, I said, pulling out my phone to show her a photo. And another daughter, Sylvia. She's 3 years older than Finn. Melanie's smile widened as she admired the picture. She's beautiful. Does she live here? No, she's in the States with her mom. My ex-wife and I divorced about 2 years ago. She tilted her head, her expression kind. Is that still difficult for you? I shrugged, feeling oddly at ease. It was at first, but less so now. We just wanted different things. She wanted an open marriage, new experiences, other relationships. I didn't. Her eyes softened with understanding. I'm sorry to hear that, Clark. That's life, I said with a shrug. Melanie, would you let me take you to dinner sometime? Maybe next weekend. Her face lit up with a smile. I'd love that, but I have to go to Los Machos the day after tomorrow. I won't be back until Tuesday. How about the Friday after that? Perfect, I said, pulling out my phone. Can I get your number? I'll make a reservation and send you the details. She handed me her phone, and I saved her contact. When you pick me up, she teased. Maybe I'll introduce you to a few cattle. We both laughed, and I walked her to her car. a sleek silver BMW Z4. Nice ride, I said, admiring it as I opened the door for her. She leaned over and kissed me lightly on the cheek, her touch sending a thrill through me. You were a wonderful dinner companion, Clark. Thank you for letting me join you. Believe me, Melanie, the pleasure was all mine, I said sincerely. I don't know how I'll manage to wait until our dinner date to see you again. You have my number now, she said with a soft smile. Call me any time. Late afternoons are best. I'll take you up on that, I promised, closing her door and watching as she drove away, feeling as if I were in a dream. Back at Finn's place, I knocked on the door to say goodnight. She opened it, practically bouncing with excitement. Well, did you like her? Isn't she amazing? Did you ask her out? She asked, her words tumbling out. I gave her a mock-serious look. You set me up, didn't you? She giggled, her grin mischievous. Guilty as charged. Good move, huh? Jesus, Finn. How did you get her to go along with it? She loves me, Finn said matter-of-factly. I told her about you, and she thought you two would be perfect together. Well, I did ask her out. She's going away for a week, but we have dinner planned for next Friday. Now I just need a car that's a bit more date-appropriate. You can borrow mine, Finn offered immediately. Thanks, honey. That'll work for now, but I think I'll need to start car shopping soon. The next day, I sent Melanie a text. I can see it now. 2 devious women conspiring against me. She replied with a series of smiley faces and hearts. Resistance is futile. My own daughter, I wrote back. Looking forward to our date. Each day that followed felt like an eternity. I hadn't felt this kind of anticipation in years. It was almost like being a teenager again, waiting for a first date. The irony of it all wasn't lost on me. Harper had been searching for that same thrill, and here I was, finding it in an entirely unexpected way. I couldn't help but wonder if Harper ever had. Melanie and I exchanged texts daily, and occasionally she'd call. Our conversations were effortless, shifting easily between Spanish and English as she shared details of her day. It felt natural, as if we'd known each other for far longer than a week. When she called to say she was back, I could hardly contain my excitement. I drove to Finn's to borrow her car, knowing the truck and camper weren't exactly ideal for a first date. Following Melanie's directions, I drove along a scenic, winding road by the river, lined with scattered houses. Eventually, I turned onto a paved path leading to a gated entrance with a numeric keypad and call button. I pressed it and waited, my heart pounding. Hola. Melanie's voice greeted me through the speaker, warm and melodic. Hola, it's Clark, I said, smiling despite myself. Her laugh was soft and inviting. I'm so glad you're here. I have a feeling you're going to be excellent company tonight. I'll see you in just a moment. The gate swung open, and I drove down a long, winding driveway. The scenery was stunning, but the further I went, the more I wondered if I was in the right place. Then, the house came into view. A sprawling mansion perched on a cliff, its architecture blending seamlessly with the natural beauty of the river below. The view was breathtaking. I rang the doorbell, and it was answered by a young girl, maybe 12 or 13. She was striking, her smile bearing a strong resemblance to Melanie's. Behind her, an older woman stood quietly, watching with interest. Good evening, Mr. Clark. I'm Nicole, Melanie's daughter, the girl said, her English as perfect and polished as her mother's. Nice to meet you, Nicole, I replied in Spanish, smiling warmly. You look so much like your mom. You're just as beautiful. Do you speak English? She blushed, much like Melanie had at dinner. Yes, I speak English, Spanish, and French. My French isn't as good, though. I bet you're amazing at all 3, I said with a grin. I'd like to take your mom out for dinner. Are you okay with that? She gave me a playful once-over, her dark eyes sparkling. Well, you are, as they say, charming for a man your age. I laughed. You're quite the charmer yourself. And hey, I'm not that old. She giggled, the sound eerily reminiscent of Melanie's laugh. Okay, maybe I exaggerated. But seriously, you're Finn's dad, and I love her. So, you have my approval. Thank you, Nicole, I said warmly. She took my hand and led me inside. The house's open design blended the living room, dining room, and kitchen into one seamless space, elegant yet inviting. This is Carla, she said, introducing the older woman, who nodded politely. Pleasure to meet you, I said, shaking her hand. Nicole runs the house when my mom's away, Nicole explained proudly. Would you like a drink while you wait for her? What do you recommend? I asked, playing along. Well, I usually go for lemonade, she said, grinning. But we also have juice and some adult options. Lemonade sounds perfect, I said with a wink. And please call me Clark. All right, Clark, she said, her eyes twinkling. But you still sound kind of formal. I chuckled. You're quite the character, Nicole. She giggled again. I just love to laugh. Let's take this lemonade to the back porch. Stay with your guest, Nicole, Carla interjected kindly. I'll bring it to you. The back porch was incredible. A sprawling mahogany deck framed by vine-covered beams with slow-turning leaf-shaped fans overhead. Glass doors revealed an unobstructed view of the river and the lush valley below. This place is amazing, I said, taking it all in. I love it here, Nicole said as we sat in comfortable chairs. Let's have a real conversation. I couldn't help but smile. Her confidence was well beyond her years. You're very much your mother's daughter, I said, amused. I've only had one real conversation with your mom, I admitted. Somehow, you never came up. She doesn't mention me much, Nicole said with a grin. She's probably afraid people will like me better than her. We both laughed as Carla appeared with a pitcher of lemonade. Nicole and I thanked her in unison, which made Nicole giggle again. Are you one of those people who can read minds? She teased. Absolutely, I said, playing along. That's why I carry tinfoil hats for everyone. Oh, I think we have a few lying around. Should I warn my mom? She asked, her eyes glinting with mischief. No need, I replied, smiling. Knowing her thoughts might help me figure out how to make her happy. Nicole tilted her head thoughtfully. Good plan, Clark. It sounds like you've got this figured out. This is my first date in years, I admitted. I could use all the help I can get. Speaking of which, Nicole, when do you think your mom will be ready? Mom likes to make an entrance, she said knowingly. Any moment now. Thanks for the heads up, Nicole, came Melanie's voice from behind us. We turned to see her standing in the doorway, radiant in a simple yet elegant white linen dress. The sleeveless design featured intricate lace at the neckline and fell just above her knees. Tan platform sandals with straps winding up her calves and a wide-brimmed white hat completed the look, giving her a sophisticated charm. Isn't Mom beautiful, Clark? Nicole asked with a grin. I cleared my throat, managing a smile. Yes, Melanie. You look stunning. Melanie smiled warmly. I see you've already met Nicole. Yes, and it's been a pleasure, I said. Nicole, you're delightful. I hope to see more of you. Finishing my lemonade, I walked over to Melanie. Somehow, you never mentioned having such an incredible daughter. I wanted her to be a surprise, Melanie replied, her eyes sparkling. I knew you'd adore her once you met. She's my world, Clark. I can see why, I said sincerely. Dinner was everything I'd hoped it would be. Melanie's conversation was captivating, and the food was exceptional. Afterward, we visited Salon Tampico, a vibrant spot alive with mariachi music, colorful decorations, and joyous energy. Melanie moved effortlessly on the dance floor, switching seamlessly between traditional Mexican dances, salsa, and tango. Holding her close during a slow dance felt surreal, like something out of a fantasy. Driving back to her house, the evening's events felt almost too perfect to be real. When we reached her door, she leaned in and kissed me. A soft, electric moment that left me breathless. Would you and Finn join Nicole and me next Saturday? She asked, her fingers lightly brushing my cheek. I'd love to, I replied, my heart racing. On Tuesday, Sylvia called me. Dad, when's a good time for me to catch up with you and Finn? She asked. How about tonight at 8? I suggested. I'll be at Finn's for dinner. Perfect, she said. Could you check with her and let me know? After confirming with Finn, I sent Sylvia a quick message, and we settled in to wait. Sylvia called at exactly 8. Dad, Finn, I can't stand living here without you too, she said, her voice emotional. I'm fed up with dating idiots, and my job is draining me. Plus, being around Mom is unbearable. I want to move there. Finn's excitement was palpable. That's amazing. Can you get a job here? I think so, Sylvia said. I'm planning to buy the travel agency that handles bookings for the lake cabins, including Finn's. Wow, I said, impressed. You've really thought this through. Are you sure? Absolutely, she said, her voice wavering. I just wanted to make sure you were okay with it. Sylvia, you're always welcome, I said, my voice soft. I love you, baby. I'll always want you close. I love you too, Daddy, she said, sounding relieved. We ended the call with plans to welcome Sylvia soon. I couldn't believe how my life was changing, but for the first time in years, it felt like things were falling into place as I lay in my camper later that night. My thoughts swirled around the day. Every moment had felt like a new chapter in a story I hadn't realized I was writing. One filled with happiness, laughter, and a sense of connection I hadn't felt in years. Finn was right. Things were falling into place. Between my growing bond with Melanie and Nicole and Sylvia's plan to move here, my life had reached a level of richness I hadn't thought possible. The next morning, I woke up early to prepare for the day. I couldn't stop thinking about the upcoming dinner with Melanie and what Finn had said. She thinks you might be the one. That thought lingered, sending a warmth through me that was both exciting and a little terrifying. It wasn't just the idea of falling in love again. It was the realization that I already had. Later in the afternoon, I drove over to Melanie's house. When I arrived, the air was buzzing with the energy of preparation. Nicole ran out to greet me, dragging Finn by the hand. Clark, Finn and I are going to decorate the gazebo, Nicole announced, her excitement contagious. We need it to look amazing. Do you need me to help? I asked, smiling at her enthusiasm. Nope, Nicole replied firmly, hands on her hips. This is our project. You and Mom just need to relax and not mess it up. Understood, I said, laughing. I'll try to stay out of the way. Inside, Melanie greeted me with a soft smile and a kiss on the cheek. Did you bring the famous pico de gallo? She asked. Of course, I replied, holding up the bowl. Enough to feed a small army. Perfect, she said, taking it from me. Let's put this on ice while we finish setting up. The afternoon passed in a blur of activity. Melanie and I prepared food together in the kitchen, her presence as comforting as it was electrifying. Each brush of her hand against mine or shared glance sent sparks through me. Nicole and Finn flitted in and out, carrying decorations, offering opinions, and making sure everything was just right. As the sun dipped low on the horizon, we all gathered in the gazebo. Twinkling lights wound around the beams, casting a warm glow over the table, which was beautifully set with candles and fresh flowers. The river sparkled in the fading light, the gentle sound of the water adding a serene backdrop to the lively chatter. We feasted on tacos, my pico de gallo stealing the show once again. Conversation flowed effortlessly, with Finn and Nicole stealing the spotlight with their playful banter. It was hard to believe we'd only been in each other's lives for a short time. It felt like we'd always been a family. After dinner, Melanie and I took a walk along the river while Finn and Nicole stayed behind to clean up. The cool evening air was refreshing, and the sound of the water was soothing. We strolled in comfortable silence until Melanie stopped, turning to face me. Clark, she began, her voice soft but steady. I wasn't expecting this. Expecting what? I asked, my heart pounding. This, she said, gesturing between us. You. I thought my life was full. I have Nicole, my home, my work. But now, I can't imagine it without you. Her words hit me like a wave, and before I could think, I pulled her into my arms. Melanie, I feel the same way. I didn't know I could feel like this again. But you've brought something into my life I didn't even know was missing. She smiled, her eyes shining. So, what do we do now? We take it one day at a time, I said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. But I know one thing for certain. I don't want to take another step without you. She leaned in, and our lips met in a kiss that felt like a promise. A moment of clarity and connection that erased any lingering doubts. When we pulled back, her smile was radiant. Let's go back, she said, her hand slipping into mine. We have two wonderful girls waiting for us. That night, as we all sat around a fire pit under the stars, I felt a deep sense of peace. Nicole and Finn roasted marshmallows, giggling over inside jokes, while Melanie leaned against my shoulder, her warmth a comforting anchor. I knew life would always have its challenges, but for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to face them. Finn's earlier words echoed in my mind. Don't mess it up. And I knew I wouldn't. Melanie and Nicole had become part of my world, and I wasn't going to let them go. With Sylvia joining us soon, the future looked brighter than ever. As the fire crackled and the laughter continued, I found myself thinking about all the paths that had led me here. And for the first time, I felt truly grateful for every twist and turn. They'd all brought me to this moment. A moment I knew I'd treasure forever. Melanie sat up, her face glowing with a mix of love and vulnerability as she watched Nicole and me. Finn and Sylvia exchanged a knowing look, their smiles wide as they leaned against the headboard. Well, Daddy? Finn asked, her tone teasing yet supportive. What's your answer? I glanced down at Nicole, her big, hopeful eyes locked on mine. Her words had hit me with such force, yet they felt as natural as breathing. I kissed her forehead softly, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. Nicole, I said, my voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside me. If your mom will have me, I'd love nothing more than to make us a family. But I think this is a question for her too. I looked at Melanie, who had tears glistening in her eyes. She smiled, her hands pressed to her chest as though she were holding her heart in place. Clark, she began, her voice thick with emotion. There's nothing I'd love more than for us to be a family. You've already shown me the kind of man you are, the kind I want to share my life with. Her words filled the room, and I felt like I was walking on air. Nicole's face lit up with excitement as she threw her arms around me. You'll really marry her? She asked, her voice bubbling with joy. I will, I said, smiling at her. If she says yes. Yes, Melanie said immediately, her voice firm and unwavering. Yes, Clark, I will. The girls erupted into cheers, and Finn and Sylvia practically tackled Melanie with hugs. Nicole wriggled off my lap to join them, and suddenly the room was filled with laughter, tears, and overwhelming happiness. Later that morning, we sat around the breakfast cart, sharing pancakes, fruit, and coffee. The excitement in the air was palpable, and every glance between Melanie and me was charged with a new, deeper connection. Finn and Sylvia peppered us with questions about wedding plans, while Nicole proudly declared she wanted to help pick out flowers. Do you think we should have it here in Tulum? Sylvia asked, her practical mind already ticking through possibilities. It's beautiful, and it would make for an incredible destination wedding. Melanie laughed, shaking her head. As tempting as that sounds, I think we'd be happier keeping it simple, somewhere close to home. Nicole nodded enthusiastically. The river, she said. We could do it by the river. Finn clapped her hands together. That would be perfect, beautiful, and meaningful. I looked at Melanie, her face radiant as she imagined the possibilities. The river sounds perfect to me, I said. What do you think? I love it, she said softly, reaching for my hand. It feels like us. The rest of the trip was a whirlwind of joy and love. We explored the Melanian ruins together, soaked up the sun on the beaches, and enjoyed long, leisurely meals filled with laughter and shared stories. Each moment deepened the bond between us, and by the time we returned home, it felt as though the foundation of our new family had already been laid. Back at the lake, life settled into a rhythm again, but now there was an added layer of joy and anticipation. Melanie and I started making plans for the wedding, keeping things simple yet meaningful. The girls were fully involved. Finn and Sylvia took charge of decorations, while Nicole made it her mission to design the perfect flower arrangements. One evening, as we sat on the porch overlooking the water, Melanie leaned her head against my shoulder. "Do you realize how far we've come in such a short time?" she asked, her voice soft and full of wonder. "I do," I said, wrapping an arm around her. "It feels like everything in my life led me here. To you. To us." She looked up at me, her dark eyes shining. "I never thought I'd feel this way again, Clark. You've given me so much love, hope, and a family. I'll never be able to thank you enough." "You've given me just as much, Melanie," I replied. "And we have so much more ahead of us." The day of the wedding arrived quicker than any of us expected. The ceremony was held by the river, under the canopy of a large oak tree draped with white flowers. Friends and family gathered, their faces glowing with happiness as Melanie walked down the makeshift aisle, Nicole proudly holding her hand. Finn and Sylvia stood by my side, their smiles mirroring the joy I felt in my heart. When Melanie reached me, her eyes locked on mine, and everything else faded away. The world seemed to stand still as we exchanged vows, promising to love, honor, and cherish each other for the rest of our lives. "You may kiss the bride," the officiant said, and I didn't hesitate. Pulling Melanie close, I kissed her with all the love and gratitude I felt in my soul, to the sound of cheers and applause from everyone around us. That evening, as the sun set over the river, we danced under the twinkling lights strung between the trees. Nicole twirled around with Finn and Sylvia, their laughter blending with the gentle hum of the cicadas. Melanie rested her head on my chest as we swayed to the music, her warmth a constant reminder of the love we'd found. "You know," I said, my voice low, "this is just the beginning." She looked up at me, her smile soft and full of promise. "The beginning of the best chapter yet," she said, leaning in for another kiss. And as I held her close, surrounded by our family and the life we'd built together, I knew she was right. This was only the beginning of a story that would only grow more beautiful with time. That I leaned back in my chair, staring into the fire. Honestly, I don't know how to feel. It's been years since we've spoken, and even though I've moved on, part of me is still angry about how things ended. But another part of me doesn't want to carry that anger forever. If seeing her helps Sylvia, then I can handle it. Melanie nodded slowly, setting her glass down. "It sounds like you're being very thoughtful about this. You're right. It's not just about you or her anymore. It's about Sylvia and Finn too. But Clark, don't feel obligated to do anything that makes you uncomfortable. You've worked hard to build this life, and you deserve peace." I reached for her hand, grateful for her steady presence. "You always know how to put things in perspective. Thank you for that." She smiled warmly. "That's what partners are for. I think Sylvia's doing what she feels is right, and I admire her for that. Maybe you could have a brief conversation with your ex, set some boundaries. It might make things easier for everyone." I nodded, considering her words. "You're probably right. It's time to put the past to rest." The next week, I called Harper. The conversation was civil but awkward, the years of distance between us making it feel like talking to a stranger. She seemed hesitant at first but agreed to meet for coffee before Christmas to discuss the visit. Melanie encouraged me to go, and though I was reluctant, I knew it was the best way to move forward. When the day came, I met Harper at a quiet cafe in town. She looked different. Her usual confident air seemed subdued, and there was a touch of weariness in her eyes. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," she said, her voice softer than I remembered. "Of course," I replied. "Sylvia mentioned you wanted to visit, and I thought it would be best if we talked first." She nodded, sipping her coffee. "I know I don't have the right to ask anything of you, Clark, but I miss the girls, and I want to spend time with them, especially during the holidays. They've grown into incredible young women," I said, my voice steady. "And you're welcome to see them. But Harper, this is their home now, mine and Melanie's. I need you to respect that." She flinched slightly but nodded. "I understand. I won't interfere. I wanted to say I'm sorry, Clark, for everything. I've thought about it a lot over the years, and I know I hurt you. Her apology caught me off guard, and for a moment, I didn't know what to say. Finally, I nodded. Thank you for saying that. I've moved on and I'm happy now. But I appreciate the apology. She gave a faint smile. I'm glad you're happy. You deserve that. The conversation ended amicably, and while it didn't erase the past, it felt like a step toward closure. When I told Melanie about the meeting, she listened intently, her hand resting on mine. I'm proud of you, Clark, she said. That couldn't have been easy. It wasn't, I admitted. But it feels like a weight has been lifted. I don't think I realized how much I needed that conversation. Melanie leaned in, kissing my cheek. You've handled all of this with so much grace. You're setting an incredible example for the girls. As Christmas approached, the house buzzed with activity. Finn and Nicole worked on decorating, while Sylvia helped Melanie prepare a feast. Harper arrived on Christmas Eve to spend time with Sylvia, and while Finn chose to avoid the visit, the rest of us carried on with the holiday spirit. On Christmas morning, Harper joined us briefly to exchange gifts. It was a little tense, but Melanie's warm demeanor kept things from feeling awkward. She even engaged Harper in polite conversation, her kindness shining through. When Harper left later that afternoon, Sylvia hugged her tightly, promising to visit her again soon. As the door closed behind her, Melanie turned to me with a soft smile. That went better than expected. Thanks to you, I said, wrapping an arm around her. You're the glue that holds all of this together. She laughed, shaking her head. It's not just me, Clark. This family works because we all care about each other. That evening, as we sat by the fire with Nicole asleep on Melanie's lap, Finn and Sylvia cuddled up on the couch, I looked around at my family, my real family, and felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Life had taken its twists and turns, but somehow it had brought us all here, together. Thank you, I said quietly, my voice thick with emotion. For what? Melanie asked, her eyes soft. For this, I said, gesturing to the room. For giving me the life I never thought I'd have. She smiled, her eyes shining with love. You gave it to yourself, Clark. You chose this, and I'm so glad you did. As the fire crackled and the girls chatted, I held Melanie close, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, we'd face them together. This was the life I'd always wanted, and it was just the beginning as the warmth of the gathering filled the room. I couldn't help but marvel at how far we'd all come. Harper's presence, which I'd once thought would stir up nothing but tension, felt surprisingly natural. Melanie's kindness and openness had created a space where even the most complicated relationships could be navigated with grace. It was her idea to bring Harper into the fold, and now, seeing everyone together, I knew it was the right call. After dinner, we moved to the living room. Melanie and Nicole had decorated a stunning Christmas tree, its twinkling lights reflecting in the window against the backdrop of the river. A pile of gifts waited beneath the tree, and the girls quickly took charge of distributing them. Max, sprawled on the rug, had his own pile of treats, and he wagged his tail enthusiastically as Nicole handed him a chew toy wrapped in festive paper. As the evening wore on, laughter echoed through the house. Harper seemed content, chatting with Finn and Sylvia as though no time or tension had passed between them. I watched Melanie move gracefully through the room, checking on everyone, her presence tying everything together. At one point, Harper approached me with a glass of cider in hand. Thank you, Clark, she said quietly, for inviting me in, for everything. I shook my head. That wasn't me, Harper. That was Melanie. She has a way of bringing people together. Harper glanced toward Melanie, who was helping Nicole with a stubborn ribbon on a gift. She's incredible, she said, a touch of wistfulness in her voice. You're lucky to have her. I know, I said, my voice steady. She's everything I didn't realize I needed. Harper smiled faintly, then returned to the girls, leaving me to my thoughts. Later that evening, when the girls were upstairs watching a Christmas movie, and Nicole had finally fallen asleep in her pile of pillows beside Max, Melanie and I found ourselves alone by the fire. She poured us each a glass of wine and curled up beside me, her head resting on my shoulder. You did something remarkable today, I said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. You brought everyone together, even when I didn't think it was possible. She looked up at me, her eyes soft and full of love. I didn't do it alone. You've created something beautiful here, Clark. A family that's rooted in love and forgiveness. I just helped it along. I held her closer, feeling the truth of her words. I couldn't have done it without you, Melanie. You've changed my life in ways I never expected. She smiled, a quiet contentment settling over her. And you've changed mine. Today felt like the beginning of something new for all of us. As we sat there in the quiet glow of the fire, I reflected on how much my life had transformed. What began as a chapter of loss and uncertainty had blossomed into a story of love, growth, and second chances. The following morning, I woke early to find Nicole and Finn making breakfast together. Pancakes sizzled on the griddle, and the smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the kitchen. Melanie joined me a moment later, her hair still tousled from sleep, and we stood together, watching the girls as they worked. "Merry Christmas, love," she said softly, wrapping her arms around me. "Merry Christmas," I replied, kissing the top of her head. As we sat down to eat, the sunlight streaming through the windows and laughter filling the room, I realized this was the Christmas I'd always hoped for. A day surrounded by love, connection, and a family that had come together in the most unexpected ways. Later that evening, as the house quieted down and the girls drifted off to their rooms, Melanie and I stepped outside to the porch. The river was calm now, reflecting the moonlight like a silver ribbon. "You know," she said, her voice thoughtful, "this feels like the life we were meant to have. A fresh start, but also something so deeply rooted in everything that came before." I nodded, taking her hand in mine. "You're right. It's not just about moving forward. It's about embracing all the moments that brought us here. The good and the bad." She leaned into me, her warmth a constant comfort. "Whatever the future holds, Clark, I'm ready for it, as long as we face it together." I kissed her, a kiss filled with all the gratitude, love, and promise I felt in my heart. "Together," I said softly, knowing that with her by my side, there was nothing we couldn't face. And as we stood there under the stars, the laughter of the day still echoing in my mind, I knew this was the life I'd been waiting for, the life I'd finally found.